The coverage this Mamdani guy has been getting is crazy. Look at this. Boca Raton mayor trying to lure people away. Apparently people are freaking out because there's talk about him wanting to tax richer and whiter neighborhoods more and suggesting that billionaires shouldn't exist. A lot of people actually agree with that billionaires shouldn't exist. Carolyn Levitt this morning misquoted him and said that wealthy people shouldn't exist, is what he said, but he actually said billionaires shouldn't exist. So this is a little bit of madness going on both sides, but that's pretty common. It does look like you've also got President Trump warning that federal funding for New York could be at risk if he wins, that he's a communist, and I think that's very bad for New York. And now other people are calling him the Fidel Castro of New York. And yeah, Boca Raton says, move to Boca Raton, the mayor, because we won't tax you like Mamdani will. Interesting, but we've got more to talk about with Mamdani. Last week we talked about Mamdani's interest in freezing rent, and we talked about how ironically when you freeze rent you actually constrict the level of housing that's available because, well, rent freezes often apply to larger multifamily properties, so you disincentivize building vertically and turning duplexes into like 10-unit apartment buildings and adding supply to Manhattan or Brooklyn real estate. And so what ends up happening is prices go up over time. Last week we, in our video, showed how an oversupply of new homes in Austin, Texas led prices to come down and rents to come down, whereas Democratic policies that constricted supply led rents and prices to go up. So this is where the economist looks at what Mamdani says and what the likely results are going to be and sees the problem, that Mamdani's policies are likely to make housing more unaffordable, which ironically a lot of people like Mamdani because they're like, oh, well, if Wall Street doesn't like him or rich people don't like him, then he's my guy. But the irony is rich people who already own real estate in Manhattan benefit from someone like Mamdani, because you're going to build fewer homes, making the existing stuff more valuable. So the existing owners, imagine this, the existing rich get richer under a Mamdani. The new people trying to get in get screwed, and you stay a forever tenant. You know, this is why people like what happened in Austin, where, you know, prices became more affordable again. More affordable, not as affordable as it used to be, but prices came down because we built more, right? Okay, this is important when you're thinking about investing and understanding real estate, the economics of this. But now this is a new piece here out from the Wall Street Journal Financial Analysis and Commentary section. It says, rent freeze to chill office conversions. All right, this is a big deal. So commercial real estate market has really slowed down in most cities because banks have lost a lot of money on commercial mortgage-backed securities. And that's because post-COVID, fewer people work in the office. We have hybrid work environments, and offices are just less desirable. A lot of offices in Manhattan are from the 60s, which are really hard to turn into residences. So you see a lot of 1920s offices get converted into residences. A lot of the 60s buildings probably have to be rebuilt because of how they're designed. Think about like those, you know, think like 1960s cubicle office. Okay, that's kind of what you have to think about. And yeah, here's kind of, I mean, this is an extreme kind of like picture here, but think more like this, where if you have windows along the outside, which makes it really hard to make apartment buildings, because what a lot of them try to do is they actually try to core out the center of the building, and then you have windows in the middle, and then you can make apartments all the way around. But there's a lot of work involved in that. You know, trying to convert one of these sort of floors, these 1960s style buildings, from these cubicle office disasters into a functional building is, for residences, is hard. The 1920 buildings weren't that bad. We've looked into a lot of this stuff with my real estate startup, House Hack, to know a little bit about it. But anyway, I thought this piece was very interesting. Rent freeze to chill office conversions. Basically a way of saying like, hey, if there's a threat of an office freeze, people might not hire architects to try to redesign these buildings, because why spend the money if it's just not going to be profitable to do it? And so you'll just have more abandoned offices and, once again, fewer homes. Turning Manhattan's unloved offices into apartments is becoming a profitable venture. True, and we want people to make money because it means they're providing a service that people are willing to pay for, right? Like, you don't, like, if somebody told you, hey, you know, go build that fireplace for your neighbor and we'll buy you a meal, and be like, bro, I'm gonna need more than a meal. Like, I can subsist off the meal, but like I need to be in business to make a reasonable profit. It doesn't have to be an excessive profit, but a reasonable profit, right? So the potential unlocks a new source of supply for New York's housing market, right? So like firms come in, they convert office projects to essentially apartment buildings. This makes sense. Okay, so then what we have is, in theory, this Mamdani's rent freeze should not affect office conversions because these are new units coming to the market. However, the conversions typically take advantage of a tax incentive that gives them a 90% tax break exemption for up to 35 years. This is something that we noticed as well when we were looking at investing in Brooklyn, is that if you add units, or there are plenty of other circumstances, you might get tax abatements that lower your taxes if you invest in the area to provide rental property to people. So this is a really big thing that boosts cap rates in the areas. However, to qualify, 25% of the apartments in the conversion have to be rent stabilized, but rent increases on those apartments are decided by the city's Rent Guidelines Board. The mayoral election is obviously still way off, but if these get hit by the rent freeze, they could end up stalling the office conversion market because people aren't sure that they would get their tax breaks. Around 16% of New York's office is empty office space. That's crazy. So that's like 1 in 6 office units are just vacant right now. Only 1.4% of the apartments are empty, showing a really big shortage, right? Turning those old workplaces into homes is starting to make more financial sense because of that difference. Big reason is owners of distressed offices are getting more realistic about what the buildings are worth, so they're selling them for 20 to 30 cents on the dollar. These discounts make the math work on conversions. Makes sense. To compensate for the loss of office values, we ended up getting, I mean, sometimes discounts as much as 50% now. Wow. Larger, well, I guess 20 to 30% on the dollar would be potentially as much as 70 to 80%. Offices are also about 56% cheaper on average right now per square foot compared to multifamily. This makes sense because an office per square foot is usually just, well, like blank cubicle space. Each square footage is relatively the same. Whereas in a house, you know, you have a kitchen, you have landscaping, entertaining rooms. The rooms are much more complex than what you have in an office. So it makes sense that home square footage is usually more expensive. New York City has a high share of offices that are ideal candidates for conversion. 19.5% of the total stock is feasible for conversion compared to just 4.6% nationwide. This is because a lot of the city's office stock is close to well-located transit hubs. In other words, it would be great to keep converting these empty office buildings to functional places people can live. But again, if somebody like Mamdani kind of puts a wedge in this, you know, or like what do we call it, like a gear and a wrench in the gears, then again you're making houses more unaffordable because you're not bringing this supply to the market, which again benefits the existing rich people who already own. Now you're not benefiting the rich people who are doing the conversions because they're just like, all right, I'll go invest somewhere else. But the people who are already rich, who are already owners, they benefit. Developers also need to carefully reconfigure the layouts to maximize rents. It's a bit like the Rubik's Cube. Yeah, we know that. The attraction of conversion is that they can be done much faster than building from scratch, usually in 18 months compared to 3 years to build for new. That creates lower risk for investors to provide housing. Here's how rent freezes could complicate things. Developers currently pick up old offices for around $300 a square foot and spend another $450 on conversions. Works out to about $750 in total costs. They could sell for about $1,000 per square foot. A rent freeze of 25% on the units would make it much harder to flip these converted apartment buildings to investors who would then hold them for the longer term. Yeah, right. That's because usually what happens is the builder doesn't hold it. Usually the builder sells it to an investor who's then going to rent it out. And if you have a rent freeze, the builder can't sell it for enough to actually profit on the build, so they just don't do it. because the investor's like, nah, bro, I'm, you know, rent freeze, bro. I'm not going to be able to actually get what I need for these units. And so you just don't build it. It's interesting. It adds another sort of wrinkle to the Mamdani equation. You know, one thing you find with people like Mamdani is they say things that are really popular because they're essentially a style of populist. Yeah, and I always get concerned, like, is Mamdani, like, there are two options. Does Mamdani not understand basic economics? In which case he's just dumb in economics. You know, he could be socially smart, but dumb in economics. Or does he understand that his economic policies are dumb, but he doesn't care because he thinks other people are dumber and they're going to vote for his dumb policies so he could get into office? That would make him not dumb, it would make him evil. So I guess there's that risk too.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.